Mountain looming so close from the other side of their floor-to-ceiling windows. From the ridge of that mountain, at the T-intersection of the two trails, I knew you could see us too. The dome of the inn and the town just beyond, with the steeple of the church pushing up through the treetops, the promise of civilization. Sometimes, on nights like this, they spill down the mountain like ants, scurrying out of a poisoned mound, searching for a place of last resort. Our lights, drawing them closer, the first sign of respite off the trail. Sometimes, if there was only one room, strangers would join forces and bunk up, in the spirit of things. Right now, it was high season, and we were booked solid in the main building. But 3 of the 4 outside cabins were vacant. The accommodations out there were more rustic, mainly used for either long-term stays or purposes such as this. The man was still standing on the far side of the lobby, hands cupped in front of his mouth, as if the storm carried a chill. I saw his gaze flick to the freestanding fireplace in the center of the room. "You're going to have to come a little closer to check in," I said. He laughed once and lowered the hood of his raincoat as he crossed the lobby, shaking out his hair and then his arms in an uncannily familiar gesture. I felt my smile falter and tried to cover for it with a glance toward the computer screen, running through the possibilities. A return visitor, someone I'd seen in town earlier this week. Nothing. Coincidence. "Here we go," I said, turning my attention his way again, hoping the sight of him so close would trigger a memory, place him in context. Brown hair, halfway between unkempt and in style, deep-set blue eyes, somewhere in his 30s, no wedding ring, the sharp line of a white scar on the underside of his jaw, which I could only see because he was a solid head taller. I imagined him falling during a hike, hands braced for impact, chin grazing rock. I imagined a hockey stick to the face, helmet dislodged, blood on ice. I did this sometimes, imagined people's stories. It was a habit I was actively trying to break. I was sure I knew him from somewhere, but I couldn't place it, and I was usually good at this. I remembered the repeat visitors, could pull a name from 3 years earlier, recognizing those who'd gotten married or divorced even, changing names and swapping partners. I paid attention, kept notes, filed away details. The stories I imagined for them sometimes helped. He looked behind him at the empty lobby before leaning one arm on the distressed wooden countertop between us. "I'm so sorry," he repeated, though I wasn't sure whether he was referring to his lack of reservation or the puddles of water he had trailed across the wide plank floor. "It's just, I left my wallet somewhere. Out there." His raincoat rustled as he gestured toward the door. He was pointing in the opposite direction of the mountain, but I let that go because of the dark and the rain, and because I knew how disorienting it could get out there on a bad night. "I had some cash in my car, though," he said, hand stuffed deep into the pocket of his coat, before he pulled out a damp roll of 20s, for emergencies. He extended the money my way, an offering held between the tips of his fingers. Hikers sometimes arrived like this. It wasn't unheard of, but I started reassessing him. The clean fingernails, the collar of his blue T-shirt, just visible, still dry. The familiar squeak of 2 new rubber-soled boots before they'd gotten any good miles on them. Celeste wouldn't approve of this. A man with no ID and no credit cards, showing up just before closing. She'd say I needed to look after myself, first of all, and then the guests, and then the inn. Would warn me that we were alone up here, that the only way to project control was to make sure others didn't think they held the reins. Celeste would rather the lost customer than the lost upper hand. She'd say, "So sorry, we're all full," and she'd mention the campgrounds down by the river, the rentals over the storefronts, the motel in the next town. But I'd been known to make some exceptions. I didn't like the idea of leaving anyone alone out there.